All right. Hi, everybody. This is our CFB Talk 119. We're back. It's going to be me, your host, Bob Kyrie. My co-hosts are out for the holidays right now, but I am still going on strong. I'm actually here in Mexico City, but hey, you know what? Things work. The internet is a miraculous thing. I'm glad to have it. So if you'd like to talk college football, we'd love to hear from you. Just go ahead and hit request and I'll go ahead and let you up, and we'd love to hear about whatever you'd like to talk about because obviously there's a lot going on as we're in that stretch where bowl season is in full effect. Let me go ahead and just paste something into the chat. So always like to let people know that they can hit request. There's so much going on these days. I mean, obviously we've had signing day continues to kind of cause some consternation among folks. I mean, certainly Oregon created animosity between some folks at Baylor and some other programs that decide that perhaps a Pac-12 school has no business in that area, especially with USC and UCLA heading to the SEC. But there's other stories there. Obviously, we've got bowls going on right now. As we're sort of getting in the fourth quarter, East Carolina seems to really have a strong lead over Coastal Carolina. You know, losing their head coach. This has been kind of a tough finish for the Chants. They are a strong program, and we're hoping they can get it going because they're always a very exciting program to watch. But so far, this bowl season looks like East Carolina's doing what they do, which is cause stress for some teams, especially punching a little bit higher as they take on teams that might be perhaps a little bit more challenging. And then, of course, we've got another bowl tonight. Kicking off at what looks like, I guess, 10:25 p.m. I think they moved that back by 10 minutes already to accommodate the Birmingham Bowl. But Wisconsin and Oklahoma State are going to be playing at Chase Field in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl, which was a Copper Bowl, which was many different other names. I still think of it as the Copper Bowl. But if you want to talk about anything, just go ahead and hit request. We'd love to talk to you about what your thoughts are in college football. You know, the couple other big sort of news items that have been happening today. Obviously, Ed Reed coming out of, I wouldn't say retirement, but deciding to jump into the head coaching ranks. Looks like we have a guest. I'm going to go ahead and let you up, Regis Betts. But as we kind of get you up here, I'm really excited to see how Ed Reed's going to do. Obviously, he was a legend at Miami, a great NFL player. He dabbled in being an assistant coach for 1 year and then has been kind of in an administrative role at Miami. But by all accounts, it seems like an exciting pick for a team because Bethune-Cookman, they've been always a program. They struggled in the past couple of years. They had a good coach. I mean, well, they had a coach, Terry Sims, who started out strong, and that was when Bethune-Cookman was in the MEAC, and that's one of the two FCS HBCU conferences. He started out strong, went 9-2, even finished the season ranked in the FCS poll. But then it kind of, it settled into sort of mostly 7-win seasons. And then, a couple of seasons ago, the SWAC poached two teams from the MEAC, Florida A&M and Bethune-Cookman, and they just had a pair of 2-9 stinkers, and they let go of Sims. So they're hiring Ed Reed. Clearly, some inspiration. It's hard not to see Deion Sanders' effect there, bringing in a superstar head coach. They actually have coached against each other in a high school all-star game before, so should be interesting to see where that goes. But anyways, all that said, Reggie, what's up?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think the big news today was in regards to the Sam Hartman news. I mean, to be quite transparent, I'm a Notre Dame fan, so it just seems interesting to me that we hear like kind of the leaks and news prior to, I guess, the official end of the portal. Now, maybe he entered the portal prior, but just, I guess, how are the reports coming out of Hartman leaning Notre Dame, or I know there's been other people like that have been leading schools prior to officially publicly entering the portal. So I don't know, is it like kind of like we're like professional sports where you kind of like they have like their camps are talking to schools? Like I don't know. I mean, obviously there's always the potential. Everyone throws the word tampering now out, like so constantly. So just kind of curious to see why, or how, these pieces of information are kind of getting put out to the public prior to them entering the portal.
I think that's a great question. I think you're on to a little bit of it. I think sometimes it's controlled or not controlled. There's a lot of folks out there, they specialize in this. For decades and decades. I still remember I've talked to, gosh, years ago, and I'm talking like 6, 7 years ago, we talked to some of the folks who were the original recruiting reporters back when that was like a something that people in sports media typically weren't as into. I mean, it was a big deal to some extent. The coaches certainly cared about it, but there wasn't that spread of coverage that we see now, and especially with the portal really making things even more. I mean, beyond just. I mean, obviously, I'm talking about recruiting, but even has made transfers equally as exciting. So I think in all of that, there's a lot of folks who know how to reach people who might be willing to talk. Sometimes it's the players, although I don't know. I'm not going to say that's what's happening here. Sometimes it's parents. Sometimes it's somebody's uncles, cousins. And you try to get that inside scoop on where it's going. And sometimes you can get some hints from players, or actually not players, pardon me. Folks within programs. But again, that would all be give up that kind of a source. And some folks are better at deriving that than others, and maybe perhaps some informal conversations where they were off the record got that kind of a lead. But yeah, it seems like Sam Hartman's heading to Notre Dame, and what do you think about that? By the way, Reggie, you said you're an Irish fan. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I mean, I don't know how to say, but a little bit of a dream come true. I mean, I'd say the most talented quarterback since Notre Dame's had talented quarterbacks, and we've had the Sean Kaisers and stuff like that, but just never. I don't think we've had the pieces and the a coach like Freeman at the forefront, where he's attracting the high level athletes. You can tell he's putting the effort in recruiting. So it'll be interesting because we're going to have to go against again. You got Ohio State at home, and you got USC, and then you got USC, which is unanimously, in my opinion, they have the best player in college football. And then Clemson's going to be interesting because I'm curious to see what Kate Klubnik can do. And then obviously you're going to throw in, Drake have to play Drake May again, I believe. Maybe I'm not sure if Florida State's on the schedule, so it'll be interesting. I mean, granted, you can't get worse than this year at quarterback play, so I won't complain there. But it'll be really interesting to see him transition from a mesh offense to a much more traditional pro offense where Tom Brees is the guy scheming guys open. So it'll be interesting. I mean, he's going to get tested. So I'm excited. And I hope this comes to fruition because usually Pete Thamel is not wrong when he puts out this to the public.
Oh yeah, no, I agree on that, and it's got to. I mean, Notre Dame fans, it's got to feel good to have a quarterback of that caliber. Decide, you know what, I think I want to play for the Irish. So that means there's stuff there in play that makes them a desirable location. Because I always think there is that the I think some Notre Dame fans do feel that sort of, well, are we where we were, or in the good old days, or I hear that. I mean, my own alma mater was USC, so I feel you on the concern of, well, are we back, or is
Oh,
this
stop! You guys will be fine for the next decade, and so
Well, I'm
I
I'm
mean,
happy for the next few years, but I'll be honest. There was a few years ago. I'm like, well, shoot, But I mean, they were at their worst when I was a student. The highlight of the 3 years I was at USC, they missed going to a bowl twice, and they lost the Sun Bowl to a still whack TCU.
yeah, it's great.
That was so. My whole world is like it can only get better than when I was a student. So, but anyways,
Yeah,
Reggie, thanks for joining us, man.
no, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, Gamecock Superman, what's up? It's been a while. Love to hear from you.
Hello, can you hear me all right?
Sure can. What's going on,
So
man?
first of all, I'd like to start out with, to transition this to the bowl game, and say that
Yes,
I'm
indeed.
I'm very excited to play Notre Dame in the bowl game, even though both South Carolina and Notre Dame are missing half their rosters. I think it's going to be a good game on Friday, but my sort of overall question, what I wanted to come here and talk about is obviously we've seen a lot of these high profile schools, a lot of Power Five schools in these bowl games, missing players due to transfers, you know, people entering the transfer portal before the bowl game, people opting out obviously to go to the NFL draft. Um, and I mean, I'm not the only one that feels this, but I just feel like bowl season, especially for someone that's a fan of a school like South Carolina, has sort of lost its luster. I mean, some of the greatest moments in our football program's history were during bowl games. The Jadeveon Clowney hit against Michigan, the win against Ohio
Yeah.
State in the early 2000s. Those were big games for us, and it just feels like we're never going to get that again because they've sort of lost their importance. What would your opinion be on how to fix that and how to, bring bowl games, the bowl games that aren't New Year's Six bowls, or, even like the middle tier bowl games like the Outback Bowl, or they call it the ReliaQuest Bowl now, or the Gator Bowl.
Yeah.
How can you bring the relevance back to those bowl games at this point?
You, you asked a great question, and there's so much going on there because I there were certainly we've seen an increase in players opting out, and it is a tough thing for fans who want to see the team that they got them excited during the regular season, that earned that spot in the bowl, and a lot of those pivotal players. It sucks when you see any of those pivotal players decide to opt out. At the same time, I mean, there's a flip side to it, although it doesn't necessarily make it better because it's not like they've had the same amount of experience or practice, but there is an opportunity to see next year's talent and kind of get a preview of that. But I know that isn't necessarily a winning argument. And with some of these bowl games, the sad truth is, past a certain point, especially the relatively new ones. I used to say new ones, but I mean some of these. I mean, I think the Bahamas Bowl just celebrated 10 years, But I mean, these newer bowl games, they were designed purely to give TV something. ESPN owns an enormous number of bowls, especially most of the minor ones, just to create TV. Actually, today is the perfect example of that. You have four back-to-back bowls, all on ESPN, not even ESPN2, just all back-to-back on ESPN right now. And it's because they are able to arrange it to fill content, in this perfect holiday season. Just speaking that the score, East Carolina still has that good lead over Coastal, but I wonder, we're in kind of a weird transition year or two right now because with the playoff expansion, of course, it's going to bring in more teams. We're going to get a little bit more excitement, although they're not bowl games, they're going to be home games. And then I believe they may do the quarter zone bowl or in some kind of bowl setup. I know they're still finalizing it. I don't want to, and I always seem to jump the gun in saying what they're going to do there, but that'll make it at least a little more exciting. But for all the other bowl teams, it's going to still be a little bit difficult because certainly, I mean, I can say this, not quoting the person specifically, but I know someone at a major company that was involved in. They had a bowl. I don't think they have a bowl name anymore, but they had a bowl name. They had named the right. They bought the naming rights. They don't run the bowl. They just paid for the right to be called their company bowl. And when the CFP came out, they actually were able to suddenly jump to a way more prestigious bowl that wasn't the CFP bowl because suddenly all the bowl kind of values dropped because suddenly they weren't as important, and a lot of advertisers, a lot of TV just kind of were like, oh well, what are we going to do with all these other bowls, the ones that didn't make the CFP or the New Year's Six.
Well, I think
So and oh, go
something
ahead.
like the Rose Bowl will never lose its luster. I mean, the history behind the
Yeah,
Rose
I think the
Bowl.
New Year's Six as a group are typically safe, and there are some others there too. But I think it's always going to be tricky with some of the newer ones. Like as you say, like while it's fun to see the new matchups, it's hard to sell the Birmingham Camellia, Serve Pro First Responder. I mean, they're neat when they're your team, but it's kind of hard to. So I don't know if there is a magic solution to making them any more desirable or interesting, especially with the way we have. And I mean, a lot of us wanted to see the players have more, more value in their own hands rather than just giving the value to the schools and their head coaches without necessarily receiving a whole lot other than a pat on the back and it's still a valuable scholarship. Don't get me wrong. But I think that's sort of the trade-off there is the increase in opt-outs and the increase in these young men deciding that what, as much as I love playing in college, this is my chance to get that check, and for a lot of folks, make the sacrifice of a lot of folks and their family worth it. So I it's really a difficult
Well,
question.
there
And
have been the idea floated that you, the first thing that they should do is move the transfer window, the first transfer window, until after the bowl game. So you can't even put in your name into the transfer portal and commit to another school and sign paperwork to go to that school until after the bowl game is over. And also, now that NIL is a factor, it's been floated that these bowl games, instead of giving out swag bags and trips to Universal and stuff like that, they should just straight up pay money to the players, because it seems like we're going in more of a professionalized direction. And if these players aren't motivated enough to play in the bowl game without some kind of monetary compensation, you could give them a portion of the gate revenue or the ad revenue, or what have you, that these bowls get. Do you think that would work?
I mean, it would be an interesting setup. It's such a wild west right now that it's an interesting idea. I don't know how that'll work in practice, because also the fear is what you pay some guy, who agrees to stay, has some awful injury, and then everyone's like, "Oh, was it really worth that?" Do you understand what I'm saying? That trade off. So I don't. I'd be curious to see if they can develop that into something that works, especially after. I mean, we know there's going to be some pullback eventually on how the NIL situation is going right now. But I think it's interesting. It's certainly an interesting one. Wow, we have several people in the queue right now. So Gamecock Superman, I just want to thank you for joining us again. It's always great hearing from you.
No problem, man. Thank you for having me.
Always, man. Hey, Thack, what's up? Been a bit.
Hey, man, I just want to say I want to fire everybody. I want to fire everybody. Get them all done. You're going to lose the game. Wake Forest. 6 minutes left. I'm sure you watched that game because it was the only thing on at the time. But 6 minutes left. It was a 4th and 3, and he punts it. He punts it on a running back that's getting how many goddamn yards a carry, dude? I don't know, man. We need if he don't get it, you know how it was at the beginning of the season, right? I said, give him his time. But, man, you got to win that bowl game. Would have felt a lot better, man. I don't know, man. I just, man, the Tigers are a crapshoot. Maybe Missouri's a basketball school now. I don't know. We'll find out tomorrow. I've been pestering my coworker who's a UK grad about it all week. So it's the first SEC game, basketball game, playing Kentucky. So, man, maybe we're a basketball school and Kansas is a football school. Now I guess the tides have turned, although I don't know, man. It's brutal being a Tigers fan because next season is not looking great fantastically. I mean, here's the thing, Luther Burden, though, give props to that guy. I think he's done more for Missouri football in terms of recruits and such than anybody since damn Gary Pinkel. But also I want to say, got the best Christmas gift ever. And here I'll lay it out for you. My family knows me very well. And got Luther Burden, Red Hot Riplets. That's a St. Louis brand chips. He's got an NIL deal with the chip brand. I got Bijan Robertson, Dijon
Nice.
mustard.
Yes,
it is fantastic. I will say,
I've heard.
Anybody who's on the fence about it, bite the bullet. If you're a Dijon fan, it tastes fantastic. And I got Mike Leach Swinger Sword. So that's quite possibly one of the best Christmases ever for a college football.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a great lineup.
I know, fantastic lineup. But yeah, sorry, I just talk because
no, man, I get it. It's tough right now. Do you think How do you think it's the make or break season for Drink next year?
I mean, so, and I said to give him a long leash. I think he's got next season to figure it out. He needs an offensive coordinator. That's first off. Second off, he has a worse record than Barry Odom. How is that? How is that possible?
UNLV head coach Barry Odom.
I know, and I'm happy for him. Barry's a Missouri guy. I was never super. I never had hate for him when he got fired.
Right. I don't think many did. Yeah.
But I mean, he was not a great head football coach at Missouri. His first years were running with Pinkel's recruits, and then it went totally downhill from there. So I don't know. You got to look at it and say, okay, well, He has less wins in the same amount of time than Barry Odom. I don't think he gets fired next season. I think if he gets less than if he gets 6 wins in a bowl game, he might stay for one more. But he's got to get 7 regular season wins, and you got to start with the non-conferences, man. I mean, we dropped Kansas State.
Yeah, 'cause
Turned
you
out
guys
to be a
got South
great.
Dakota, fine. Then you got Middle Tennessee, which normally I'd say is a win, but they'll occasionally pull something crazy like they did on Miami. Which, granted, Miami wasn't great this year. But then
Yeah,
it's that K-State game. That's the one I'm really curious to see. K-State
it's that.
against Mizzou. That's going to be a fun one.
It's and I said Kansas State turned out to be a really great team. I mean, at the beginning of the season, we started off on a sort of a high note, and they blew us out completely, and everyone was like, "The season's over." And looking back at that loss now, I mean, Kansas State was probably one of the most underrated teams.
Oh yeah, agreed.
Without, I mean, TCU, you got to look at TCU came from nothing and they made something fantastic, but K State, I mean, come on.
Yeah. Well, and we were all waiting to see Klieman kind of reach that, show what he could do, and he certainly did. So,
Yeah.
but
Hey, well, thank you.
hey, thanks, Zach. It was great hearing from you. Merry Christmas, man. Those were fun
Yeah.
presents.
Yeah, I know. Go Tigers.
Yeah, take care. All right, let's see here. We're gonna get through everybody. We got Tattoo Baker. What's up? I'm letting you up. When you're up here, just hit unmute, and then I'll get to you, Dave, and then I'll get to you, Trey. What's up? I can see you're unmuted, but I can't hear you, Tattoo Baker.
Oh, I didn't know you were talking to me, bud. Sorry.
Oh yeah, no, sorry. I go by folks as you like Nick, because like on what I'm seeing is I just see your user, like the name you put on your like the Twitter handle thing. So sorry about that.
Good.
What's going on?
Good, dude. So knowing that you're a massive account, love the account too. You're always coming up with funny stuff. Question for you: do you think that Lincoln could ever take the Denver job, and if next year maybe go to the NFL, whatever it is, just leave for the NFL sooner rather than later? You know what I'm saying? Like, is he going to stick it out? Do you feel like he's going to be a long haul in the college, or do you think he's going to just a quick ditch to go to the NFL? Thanks.
Ooh, that's a great question. I'm always hesitant to predict on some of this. I always think to some extent it's because I mean even Nick Saban went to the NFL for that brief period and decided, you know what, I hate this. This isn't what I'm good at. And I think he left early because he just wanted to go back to what he enjoyed. So is this going to be something where he needs to taste it himself, and go back? I mean, I still remember when Lane Kiffin, left USC to go be the head coach of the Raiders under Al Davis, and that was a trial by fire for him.
Yeah.
I don't know if he'd ever be curious to want to go to the NFL again. So I don't know. That's a great question because it's so hard to get into. I mean, think about it. Did we ever expect him to go to USC?
Hell no.
I mean,
Hell no. Never thought about it.
So it's like, how do we even get in there? Like, so it tells you how to get into someone's head and all of this. And then sometimes the NFL makes coaching hires that you get surprised by. I still remember that short, like it was like a week, maybe less. Cliff Kingsbury announced as USC's new offensive coordinator after Texas Tech fired him, and then the Arizona Cardinals just hired him as their head coach. And he was gone. And I was, everyone was like, wow, okay. Yeah. Maybe the Cardinals saw something, and clearly he's been there at least for several years now. But so it's hard to get. I always hesitate to get in anyone's head, especially people who are super competitive, like any head coach in college football, quite frankly, especially those in the, grinding their way up through the to get to a D1 head coaching position, FCS or FBS G5 or P5. So, it depends what are they comparing themselves against. I mean, again, not to keep using USC examples, but I mean, Pete Carroll, everyone knew he kind of wanted to go back to the NFL and prove that he could do it there again after failing, failing and at least getting fired twice before, he took a break and then ended up at USC. But even then, he was super deliberate, got offers, kept saying no until he got that offer that was exactly what he wanted. Yeah. So, if you keep winning in a college program, though, they're going to start offering, and then eventually they're going to start making more desirable offers. And maybe one day a head coach says, I'm tired of being here, and maybe I want to move on. And maybe that's what led him to leave Oklahoma to go to USC, and maybe that same kind of restlessness would send him to the NFL. But it's a great question. I don't know, and also certainly a ton of money doesn't hurt. Yeah.
I dropped that one fake edit for Denver, and everybody's been talking about it. So I just thought maybe I'd pick your brain since you're on.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, take care. All right, Dave, what's going on? Sorry, it's just me hosting tonight. I'm actually here in wonderful Mexico City, which is also in the central time zone, which I typically am, usually way farther north in Minnesota. So I've traded -20 for +60. So I'll take that in yardage improvement from day to day. But Dave, what's going on, man?
Ed Reed.
Yes, yes. I mentioned it at the beginning, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
I love the hire. I love the hire. The only thing that has to be considered is the fact that Bethune-Cookman right now is going through a lot of leadership challenges. But other than that, I love the hire.
Yeah, because I want to go to that because I know Bethune Cookman's been struggling a bit just to kind of get the school, keeping it, as you said, administrative challenges. Moving to the SWAC and then having the program kind of dip the way it did under Coach Sims wasn't helpful. And I know there was some, I think we even talked about it in an earlier space that it's like this is a program that the university is because I mean you don't even have to be. I'm not even trying to pick on Bethune Cookman. I still remember. Gosh, I think part of the reason that I mean, again, not to go to USC again, but I think part of the reason they held on to Clay Helton so long is off the field, the university was going through some serious problems. Like their dean of the medical school was going to get thrown in jail for horrible things he was doing, and all these so sometimes like I'm like the school was just distracted. They had other things to worry about. So but then Cookman going through its own distractions. I was wondering like, well, who are they going to get to be the next head coach? And Ed Reed, sure he hadn't been a head coach, at least on a high school or college level. But at the same time, man, that's a splashy hire, and seems to be just the kind of guy who'd be willing to take that risk, and just the sort of person who can galvanize that interest in the program again and keep it going out in Daytona.
Yeah, man, it's gonna be interesting, man. And I think because he went to the U, he's gonna have the U to back him. They're gonna they're gonna make sure he succeeds down there, man. So it's gonna be interesting to see how this unfolds. And I think a lot of folks within the SWAC were celebrating with Deion Sanders leaving the conference, and now they might have to deal with Ed Reed because he unlike Deion, he actually has pro coaching experience. He was an assistant
Yeah,
for Buffalo. So it's a different ball game. He doesn't have the same charisma as Deion, but he's well respected. People know who he is. He's an NFL Hall of Famer, and he can convince kids to come. He can convince kids in the south of that state to stay there,
yeah, and I even read that
to go to Bethune.
he coached the Under Armour High School All American game head to head against Dion. So they've even coached against each other at some point.
So
But
that's gonna be interesting, and so I'm looking forward to see how that's gonna go. That's a big hire for Bethune, and it's much needed because their enrollment's been down and things of that sort. So I think this is gonna help a lot of things, not just in football. It's gonna help the university as a whole.
absolutely. Yeah, and I think that was an exciting hire. And it was good to hear it. And they picked a good day because that was a splashy one. Everyone's talking about it, and that's what you want when you make a hire. You don't get lost in the shuffle. And I'll be interested to see it. I think a lot of people are going to pay attention to how he does out there. And again, it's still in the state of Florida, so that'll play to his strengths. I know some people were going to play at the U because Ed Reed was there and he had that tradition. So I think it's going to be a big one for Bethune and Bethune Cookman. Hopefully, we'll see how that plays out over the next season or two. I hate saying next season because that's a bit of a short runway for somebody to launch into it.
Well, yeah, that too, right? And a lot of people don't realize too is that Grambling tried to get Ed Reed last year and he declined it. So
Oh,
a lot of people don't know that.
why do you think?
I mean, it could have been a situation where it's about the fit. It could have been a situation where, because he's from Louisiana, he's from New Orleans. So it could have been a lot of reasons why he made the decision to decline it. But maybe he thought he could probably do more damage at Bethune Cookman. And he'll probably definitely make a bigger impact there for sure. Because
Yeah,
Bethune was just a few years away from being a pretty good football program. I mean, prior to leaving the MEAC, they were a pretty good team. Like before they went ahead to the SWAC, they were a pretty good team. I mean, they beat Florida A&M in their Florida Classic like I think 10 straight times prior. Like like they were a good team prior to them heading to the SWAC. I don't know what happened, but
Yeah,
so it'll be
absolutely.
you see how that unfolds.
Absolutely. Well, Dave, thanks for joining us, and then hang out if you'd like. Love to hear your thoughts on everything, man. All
Yeah, I'll
right,
stick around
here.
for a little bit.
All right. Hey, Trey, what's going on? Letting you up. I know the way. Actually, it's really funny. If you've ever been let on as a speaker on a Twitter space, there's a half second like jump in time because you're all hearing it on a slight delay. And then if you hit request and you're put on the stage, you suddenly get kicked into exact live feed. So as I was saying, Trey, you're up here. I just realized you might not have actually heard me say it. So what's going on, Trey? Go ahead and hit unmute. All right. Oh, it looks like the computer kicked them out. That sometimes happens. So again, if you'd like to join in the conversation, love hearing from you. I see Trey. I see Trey again. I'm gonna go ahead and let it back up. Just hit request. It's always good to hear from you. My name's Bob Kyrie. My co-hosts are having their holidays elsewhere. One of them is actually in a power outage right now.
Hey,
But I've got power here in my hotel in Mexico City. What's going on, Trey?
hey, I'm here. I'm sorry about the technical
No worries,
difficulties.
dude. It happens all the time. You think we've had my favorite. I'm not going to name the guest, but we had a guest who didn't realize he had to be on a phone to talk because we didn't set him up directly. We went through quote unquote his people, and his people forgot to tell him he had to use a phone. So it was literally me and the other co-host who were just sat talking for like 10 minutes, and finally we realized what was going on. We're like, you have to use a phone, and then within like 30 seconds he was on. So don't worry, dude. We've had everything possible happen.
Not a
What's
pro-
going on, man?
not a problem. So, an Arkansas fan that is watching the Arkansas Kansas Liberty Bowl, and according to Memphis Light Gas and Water, there's uh, a boil ban on your water, and
Yeah, there's a boil water notice. It's Memphis being Memphis,
it
unfortunately.
being an East Arkansan and seeing a bunch of Memphis news, it doesn't surprise me, but I'm a little bit disappointed. I gotta say this: I love our Razorbacks. We're going there. I'm actually really excited to play Kansas. I know that that's not the most exciting matchup, but I'm really excited to see them play. I'm just really disappointed that all the Arkansas fans going over from Little Rock, Fayetteville, and over to Memphis don't really get the luxury of having a flushing toilet. So I'm sure have y'all talked about this because
Hey, bro.
No,
Hey,
Memphis is
Trey.
yeah.
I wanna let you know, man. Like we were. It's funny you say that. I did a Spaces earlier today about Jackson, Mississippi. Like I think people have this perception that Jackson's still not going through a water crisis. It got worse to the point where now, like, there's some pockets of Jackson where there's no water at all. Besides the fact that some pockets might just have potable water. And I did hear that Memphis did not have water as well, which was kind of disappointing. But I'm seeing a trend that's not good.
yeah,
I,
Um,
I agree
aging
with you
infrastructure.
wholeheartedly for sure on the water crisis in the mid South for sure. That like Jackson and now Memphis with this near like 0 degree weather that happened this past Christmas holiday. It's horrible. And then like we're talking about what's current events, and then also a bowl game, but also people's livelihoods. You know, what I love about Arkansas Razorback football is that we're going to the Liberty Bowl, but I hate that like we're going to experience this, and then also it exposes a lot that like a major city in the Mid South has a big problem, and then Jackson, just south of that, has a big problem too. So anyway, that's the big thing I was going to say. I hope the Razorbacks win, beat the Rock Chalk Jayhawks, but it's a very interesting position to be in where you're thinking about infrastructure and college football at the same time.
I agree.
well,
Oh, go ahead, Trey.
it,
Oh, go ahead, Dave. Sorry, Dave.
nah, it's interesting for me because I can only speak for the Jackson side of the fence. I know they just passed that big expensive bill that everybody's gonna get taxes and all the other hoopla. But I just hope, I think $600 million was earmarked for Jackson to fix their water. Let's just hope that the folks in the state actually put the money where it's supposed to be to fix their water, because, and there's probably other towns that need that money too. So they probably need to get more money down to those other cities and get things resolved, because our infrastructure is crumbling in so many different areas across the country, and it's been underutilized and things of that sort because folks ain't put the proper investments in.
Yeah, and this is a tough time for I think Memphis to be hosting their signature bowl game, because it's I mean, and not to poke at them a bit, but the Liberty Bowl Stadium, or the Liberty Stadium, is kind of it's got a reputation for it. I mean, if you ever talk to some of the folks who've covered games in there, the press box is supposed to be infamous, like straight up infamous. There's no other way to even put it. And because I think part of it is love to have an on-campus stadium. That's something they've been kind of wanting for years and years, and it seems to slowly gain a little momentum. We'll see that, but I think there's what they're dealing with is no one really wants to necessarily maintain it quite as well, because it's no one's sure what the future of the stadium will be, and then you pile this on top of it. I mean, can you imagine what it's going to be like in the locker room? I mean, they're going to have to come up. I'm sure both teams. Don't get me wrong. We have two very sophisticated athletic departments. I mean, they're P5 programs. You got the Razorbacks. You got the Jayhawks. They'll come up with something for the team and the players. But all those fans going in there and all the local, I mean, people who are there, it stinks. And I mean, I'm looking forward to the game, no doubt. I mean, gosh, two interesting stories for both programs. I mean, obviously the Razorbacks kind of disappointing to have beat. I mean, they're a little. You have one team that start. Both teams have started really strong. One team is still excited because the fact that they even went to a bowl is a minor miracle for a lot of Jayhawks fans. And we saw the power of Lance Leopold, who had been that dynamite head coach at Wisconsin Whitewater, showing that he can do what he can do at the FBS level, let alone the P5 level. But watching Arkansas rise to number 10 and then kind of fall off a bit, that was tough. But they have a real passionate fan base, and so I think, and it's luckily a close one for them too. I mean, it's as you said, Trey. It's not too bad of a drive to get over to Memphis, especially for for those Razorbacks fans in Eastern Arkansas.
Yeah, for sure, and that's a very good thing for all Razorback fans. Everybody likes going to Memphis. There's a lot of it's a regional hub, and everybody likes to go in there. It's just kind of a shame that people are going to go there with, oh, there's porta potties, and you may not be able to take care of your basic needs, or have to stay in a hotel an hour and a half away just to get running water. So, anyway, Woo Pig, and I respect the Jayhawks for being in this bowl, and I think we're gonna have a great bowl game, and I'm very excited about it. So, anyway,
we're going to be watching it for sure. We're going to have someone. I think that we had someone who's going to be covering the game from the stadium. We actually, because the press box thing came up, he's like, I don't know if we should apply for the press box in this one. I think I'll be good just sitting in the audience for this game. So we're like, all right, I won't file for your press credential. You can go sit in the crowd, dude. But it's the only time I've ever had anyone make that request, for the record. But that stadium needs a little bit of an upgrade. But beyond that, we hope the best for everyone in Memphis right now for getting the water situation fixed.
Indeed, and Woo Pig Suey.
Take care, man. It's good hearing from you, Trey. Again, just a quick reminder, if you'd like to chime in, we're going to keep this going for at least a few more minutes. My name is Bob Ekayeri. We're talking college football on Tuesday nights. By chance, I'm here in Mexico City on a vacation, but why not? Let's keep this going. It's the same time zone as Minnesota. I can easily keep this up. As for those of you who probably know, there's some bowls going on. There's final seconds of that Birmingham Bowl. It might have gone final. I mean, sometimes these things are on delay, but East Carolina is going to go to 8-5 and gave Coastal Carolina their fourth loss. So 53-29. That was a lot of scoring going on there. And the Pirates are always a fun team. I kind of want to see how ECU does. I hope they're always a fun team. They're always trying. I mean, the program, I'm fascinated by them because they really, every time there's an opportunity to join a P5 conference for the last decade, they have always been on the forefront of trying to get up there. They haven't quite made it, but they have such talent. You know, in the area, they have such passionate fans. But Mike Houston is a head coach who's impressed us at RCFB because he used to be at James Madison. He was they poached him away. Obviously now James Madison's a FBS program, but he has the ability to win, and I think with just a little bit more time, they'll be able to get East Carolina in a good spot. And you know, just wanted to, I'm sorry, I'm kind of mumbling on that one, but I'm excited to see where they go next. And the other one is Guarantee Rate Bowl. Wisconsin's already up just a little bit, 3-0 over Oklahoma State. So all of these have been on ESPN. Actually, it looks like they have it on ESPN2 now until that East Carolina game goes final. Then they'll move to ESPN. So those are the games that are going on right now. It's bowl season. It's a lot of fun. Buffalo beat Georgia Southern earlier today. Memphis beat Utah State, beat up Utah State in that first responder bowl. But if there's in college football, as you know, we've been talking a little bit about the fact that Bethune-Cookman hired Ed Reed as their next head coach. That's going to be an exciting one back in the SWAC. Got another big name down there. And there's all sorts of other things going on. I mean, gosh knows, and on RCFB, we had lots of different conversations in the past week. There's the one article that I swear has been dragged through the rocks by a lot of fans, but also we always wonder if people take it that seriously. The headline was on the San Francisco Chronicle that the Rose Bowl is dead, killed by our winner-take-all culture. Humanity may be up next. That headline got a lot of attention from, I think, a lot of folks who were just I don't even know how many people on RCFB, the section of Reddit, actually read the article, which is unfortunately a tradition on Reddit. But the reactions to it were just all over the place. I mean, people mockingly saying they're never going to watch college football again, and the college football playoff had well, awkward having just talked about Memphis, but had poisoned our water supply, burned our crops, and delivered a plague unto our houses. So I'm not sure if that all of that is true. I think the Rose Bowl will be fine overall, and certainly, as some have pointed out, one of the most exciting, actually, two of the most exciting Rose Bowls in history involved teams that were not the traditional matchup. USC and Texas, obviously, in the 2006 Rose Bowl, which ended the 2005 season, and then that prior year was also an exciting one. I think it was Texas and Michigan. So there's been some amazing games in that stadium. Stadium itself is absolutely fabulous. People like to talk about the Rose Bowl as being some magical place. It's like the perfect traditional stadium. It's just a bowl. In fact, if you want to know the history of it, it's based off of the Yale Bowl, the Yale Stadium, Yale's football stadium, which celebrated its 100th year like several years ago. It was the first football bowl stadium, and so a lot of other architects were influenced by that. The Rose Bowl, as you know, is older than that, but they didn't play it in a real big stadium. They kind of played it in the field. It was such a disastrous, one-sided affair the first time they had it that they actually didn't do another Rose Bowl football game for a couple of years. They did things like ostrich races, chariot races, all sorts of wacky stuff to try and get, because the whole point of the Rose Bowl wasn't to get football. It was to get people in colder climates to read a newspaper and see some information about roses being grown in
Yeah,
California on January 1st. So suddenly you're like, hey, maybe I'm going to
yeah. Like
relocate.
I think that I always was under the perception like the game was the secondary thing of the Rose Bowl. It was more about everything else around it.
You got it, Dave. The parade is the oldest part because that was it.
Like I think the game, like I think like everybody's like wondering about the game, but the reality is the folks that run the Rose Bowl, all the events, the game is just there. It's about everything else around. The parade is
Yeah.
more important. Like
Yeah, and people like the organization is still called the Tournament of Roses, and it's a Tournament of Roses parade. It's not the Tournament of Roses bowl. The bowl is like the secondary. Exactly. Don't get me wrong; it's huge, and I
oh, it's
don't
huge
think
for
they would.
it's huge for college football. But for the guys and gals that run the Tournament of Roses, like A&T's going to march at that parade next year. They're not thinking about that game. They're getting to march at that parade.
Oh yeah.
That's where it is.
Yeah, people around the world know the parade. They don't know the bowl. It's like I always talk to your friends who may have a friend, international friend. You're like, hey, yeah, blah blah blah, and they kind of think like, are you talking about the NFL? No, no, college football is really big in the United States. It's as big as your sports in your country. But I get it. All right, fine, and you just kind of blather on. I've been there so many times. Hell, I'm in Mexico right now. It's fun to tell. I mean, and I got to say, I always hear how popular NFL is down here. It absolutely is. I've never seen so much NFL gear on guys and gals just walking around. So I mean, it's a huge sport, and they've got college football down here. It's not as quite as big, but our CFB we're on that scale where we follow international football, so they do have it. And congratulations to Monterrey Tech for winning the overtime game to win the national championship down here in Mexico. But um, yeah, no, I mean all the original bowls were like that. I mean, you had the Sun Bowl. I mean, is actually one of the oldest bowls in America. It's I think the second oldest now. I mean, it's a way of promoting El Paso as a sunny place. The Sugar Bowl. Hey, New Orleans. It's a wonderful place. Warm weather. Orange Bowl. Hey, look, Florida's got oranges. You can have an orange in January. So all of this stuff started as tourism marketing ploys, and then next thing you know, football got so serious that we decided, let these bowl games. I mean, because think about it, the bowl games they didn't count for the national championship until the late '50s, early '60s, because it was a bonus game. It was something to do after you wrapped up your season. It was kind of a gift to players, but also an opportunity to get really excited fan bases to maybe travel the country and see these warm places themselves. So all of it was marketing, and then now the death of the Rose Bowl, it's a bit much. I mean, some of those early games, I mean, we had someone cover the Harvard Yale game this year, and Harvard still has the Rose Bowl banner up. And they weren't, if we were talking about traditional matchups, they weren't a traditional team. Tulane, gosh, years ago, I toured the Tulane campus with their sports information director. They still have the Rose Bowl arena. That's what they nicknamed their basketball venue. That was paid for by money the school somehow had got from the joy of the 1 year Tulane went to the Rose Bowl all those years ago. So it's kind of fun and an interesting tradition. And to even say that the Rose Bowl is going to somehow necessarily be damaged just because it's not Pac-12 versus Big Ten, I mean, some of the greatest stories involving that stadium had nothing to do with that traditional matchup.
I promise you, those guys ain't losing no sleep. It's kind of like the Masters in Augusta, and the fact that they charge such cheap prices for everything there, like a hot dog's still like $2, and a beer's like $3. Like it's so cheap when you go check out Augusta at the Masters, because the guys that run it don't care. They just want to show you the ambiance.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Hey, Reggie, I know you wanted to chime in on this. Go ahead and unmute. And if any of you guys out there want to join us, just hit request. We'd love to have you
I,
join our conversation.
a little bit off topic, but since you guys were talking about the Rose Bowl, it made me think of something. And with the discussion of, I mean, I guess the expansion of the playoffs, did they ever discuss what is going to happen with the New Year's Six games? Because obviously you're going to have a lot of those teams are going to be in the 12-team playoff that would traditionally be in the New Year's Six games. So did they ever? And I
Yeah.
mean, I just was
No,
curious.
they
Like, did they
did.
ever
They did.
discuss?
It's going to rotate around where the the quarterfinals are gonna because there's 6 games, and so it kind of works out. They're gonna
Mhm.
have 4 of them are gonna rotate as being the quarterfinal game sites, and then the other 2 will be the semifinal game sites, and then they'll still do the open bidding process for the national championship game, where it could be anywhere. So they're gonna kind of rotate them through, is my understanding, and I don't know if there's some further nuance to it, but I know when they were kind of illustrating what the plan was for the initial 2 years of it, that's how they had done it. It was like the 2 of the Bulls kind of moved into the quarterfinals and 2 moved into the semifinals. So they're kind of it's almost like the original like BCS arrangement.
That's what it feels
The
like.
+1 BCS arrangement where they would kind of
Yeah, yeah.
rotate around.
Yeah, because I was just curious because I know originally like when they were having like a little bit of the rumors of it, they were discussing potential home field advantage for higher ranked teams in the quarterfinal games, which would have been pretty unique. I mean, I think that'd be a good. I mean, it'd be a good thing for a probably viewing experience. I know they do like the idea of having neutral site games because they want to have them at those a lot of the brand name sites, but. I was kind of hoping, in a sense, they would do some like home field advantage, like because you never
The
know when
first
you
round
move.
will be. The first round games
Oh, it
will
is.
be
Oh, it
on
is.
on
Okay, it
home
is home field
stadiums.
advantage. Well,
And in fact,
okay.
I think the only rule they've said this from the beginning, because I remember when they first said they're going to do it before they even had these details. Bill Hancock did like a media call, and we listened to him talk, and he's brought up the one thing they've admitted is they know there's a small chance that it could be a higher ranked team that just has a stadium that's way too small. Like imagine I don't want to name a name, but like let's say a program in the MAC or maybe Sun Belt. Like let's say, okay, fine. Let's say University of Louisiana Monroe has the greatest season in their history. They go undefeated, and somehow the other P5 teams, the P5 and G5 champions, just are not having a great year. So they end up being the favorite, the high ranked team in that first round game, and maybe they decide this is not quite the venue they want to have it in, and in which case they said they could move to a not neutral, but like a nearby venue and just use it like a pro venue or and it would still be a home game. It would be a designated home game. They never really. The thing was, I mean, needless to say, that brings up a ton of questions. It's not clear if they made it sound like the CFP could have some veto power in terms of if a home stadium is not going to quite work. It kind of reminds me, and again, I'm not a big soccer guy, but I know there are some rules, for example, for like who can host a FIFA game, like certain levels of championship games, especially in Europe. This comes up like which soccer stadium, like they have to improve it to be. They have like some star rating system to host a certain level of game. So it feels a little bit like that, but I don't know in practice how it would come up.
Well, they have it in the college baseball regionals. Like there's you have to have certain requirements of sites of seating attendance. Because I know, because granted, in college baseball, since I was I played at a mid major in college baseball. Like there was a lot of really really good major teams that were. I mean, they're probably not better than some of the SEC, some of the mid to higher end SEC or ACC teams, but there were higher end collegiate baseball teams. So a team like, for example, like Dallas Baptist, probably one of the perennial top 25 to top 40 college baseball teams. Like there's a lot of times they'd have host regionals, but they could only seat, I believe it was between 12 to 1,400, and you had to be able to seat 2,000. They couldn't fit bleachers there, so extra bleachers there. So they had to move to a neutral site, and luckily, they couldn't use Arlington, so they had to move. I think it was a couple hours away. So it kind of like knocked off kind of really did no good because most of those games, you're only going to have probably about 50 to 60% attendance. So that's what I was going to say. Like hypothetically, like this year could have been Tulane. Like if Tulane would have went 11-1, 12-0, they probably would have finished between 9. I mean, it potentially could have been like a 5 or 6 seed. So I was been serious. Like, what if they were hosting? I don't know, like USC, or Utah.
Yeah, but I think that's you bring up an interesting point. I think Tulane might have been okay because Ullman Stadium is pretty modern, but I'm thinking like
true.
Before, and I'm thinking specifically of this, but I think there's two things you brought up which I thought were really fascinating. I think it would be a disaster if you have, and I'm not saying this would happen to App State, but let's say a program like App State isn't stuck in that situation. There isn't a stadium immediately next to them. They're really in their own little pocket, so that would be kind of a tough situation for them to have all their fans. Although I assume a large amount of their fans don't live in Boone, because it's a smaller town. But they might have to go that, and that could lead to some real grumpiness and controversy, especially if that home team loses, the designated home team loses. But the one program I was thinking of, although they are currently improving the stadium, is San Jose State would be a good example, because if they suddenly had some dynamite season and they're the host, then it would be kind of I wonder, Spartan Stadium isn't terrible, but I mean, if they wanted to move it, I don't know if it would have to go to like, Levi Stadium isn't that far away, or gosh, I don't know what would happen if a team had to use another college stadium. Can you imagine like, hey, Stanford, can we borrow your stadium for a playoff game if they're not in it? It's intriguing. I think I don't know if we'll ever reach that point. I don't know if it's something that's just more on paper. It might never happen in practice, but it's a possibility out there for sure. But I saw we have someone else who wanted to join in, so I let you up here, Anthony. If you want, just go ahead and unmute. We'd love to hear from you.
Hey, how's it going? I just wanted to kind of change the subject and get your thoughts on the Rose Bowl coming up this upcoming week. I'm a Utah alum headed down for the game. Super excited. It'll be my first Rose Bowl experience, so I'm super pumped. Obviously, I think it's a really tough matchup with Penn State, but Utah's playing its best ball all year. We've got a couple opt-outs with our 2 first-rounders, Kincaid at tight end, Phillips at corner. I think that's going to be really tough to overcome, but want to get your guys' thoughts on the game and the Rose Bowl atmosphere.
I have one thought. I just have one initial thought. As a USC fan, I'm so glad that Kincaid has decided to take his talents to the NFL. That dude,
He's a buddy. He lives with my little brother, and so we've got no.
I admire
Yeah,
him
he's
and
a
completely
good player.
was, yeah. Well, man, yeah. So, but that said, I mean, oh gosh, I'm excited about it. And I think too many people are, I think, hung up on the fact that is this the last traditional Rose Bowl matchup, blah blah blah. I mean, okay, I even find that humorous because like 30 years ago, Penn State wouldn't have been in the Rose Bowl, couldn't have been in the Rose Bowl, and Utah certainly wouldn't have either. So we're talking about a traditional Rose Bowl matchup for the finale. But at the same time, it's an exciting one. Utah, as you said, it's playing really strong. Clearly they made a statement in the Pac-12 title game. Regardless of how Caleb Williams was, that was just a dominating performance, and they did not let up. So there's a lot of excitement seeing them go back there, especially after the heck of a game that was in the last year's Rose Bowl. So to see Utah return, that's exciting of itself, and maybe I don't know, having a lot of players from that team come and return to the Rose Bowl, they're going to be a little more like this is old hat. I mean, I think the only real change for them since last year is the Lowry's Beef Bowl is actually happening again at Lowry's again.
Well,
Like last year, they were still moving it at the hotel. Like each team had their own like hotel ballroom that they got to have the Beef Bowl. But this year they're doing it again. I know that only because the reporter who's covering the Rose Bowl, I had to put in an invite. He asked me to put in for him, so he's going to cover that. But but that said, I mean, Penn State, man, we've talked about them on and off all over the season because they had that tough situation being in the same division as Ohio State and Michigan and losing handily to both. So, but at the same time, they're not a bad program. So it's hard to gauge how these two are going to match up. I mean, I think Utah's the hotter team. That's just my gut because they had that extra game with the championship and they absolutely killed it in that game in the best possible way. So this is it. This seems to be Utah's real opportunity to go in there and get themselves something. What are your thoughts, Anthony?
No, so I agree with you. I think 2 things to point out. Last year's Rose Bowl, everyone just wants to point to, they just really remember that high-scoring affair and Jackson smithing Jigba, having 400 yards. But one thing they failed to realize is one of our defensive backs, passed away during the year. We had cluster injuries at the position.
Oh yeah,
We had a 4th-string running back playing number 2 starting corner. And so that's why, I think Utah's a lot deeper at the position this year, and I think the defense is gonna play a lot better, even despite Phillips. But they have cluster injuries. Their 2 best tight ends are out. Their starting 3 running backs are out with Tavian Thomas, Chris Curry, and potentially Bernard as well. So it's just going to be Utah's really deep this year, but I don't know a whole lot about Penn State. But all of a sudden, you look up and they've got a million studs, coming out into the NFL. So I think it's going to be really tight. One other huge advantage that we're going to have is Utah travels really well, especially to California. It's going to be a pro Utah crowd. And especially with the weather and the travel issues going on, it's going to be, I think, hard for some Pennsylvania State people to get out there. So I think it's going to be a pro Utah crowd, and I'm expecting a Utah win, but I think it's going to be close.
yeah, absolutely. Well, Anthony, that was a perfect way to kind of close out tonight. Been going for about an hour, as I've mentioned at the top of the hour. I'm here in Mexico City. My cohorts, JD Moore and Sirius, are both kind of stuck with vacation-related issues or holiday-related issues. So I'm going to go ahead and take this spot to go ahead and wrap up. I just want to thank all of you who called in, and it was great hearing from you. And Dave and Anthony, you guys are up here right now, but the rest of you who are up here too, thank you so much. It's always good just talking college football. Trey, Thack. Oh gosh, there were so many of you guys. So on behalf of myself, Bob Kyrie, I just wanted to say I hope you all have a great and happy New Year. We'll guess this is the last show of 2022. And we'll be talking to you in 2023. And, it's going to be a lot of interesting football between now and then. So wherever you're at, have a great night. And I'm going to hang up and listen.